Welcome back to the Interact Post. Today, Article 17 will include us going over and discussing leaks related to Genshin. Specifically, 4.5 first half banner with the 4 stars, more Arlecchino and Clorinde information, and more changes to the 4.8 skins. Like always, all the info we have found, you can find yourself. We are not beta testers and have no inside information. We will be using various resources that everyone does have access to, so go ahead and take a peek for yourselves as well. Now with all that out of the way, onto the video. So the first leak we do want to look at is the 4.5 first half banner, and looking at the live stream date as well as the release date, and then obviously looking at the specific first half banners with the 4 stars, which is kind of interesting to look at. So Rift, could you maybe just go over all of that information for the first half of that banner?
Yeah, so in 4.5, this first half we're looking at, before I mention some of the characters, you can expect the live stream to be on March 1st, that's that Friday. That'll usually be in the morning, so look forward to that. And then the actual release for 4.5 itself will be on March 13th, which that is a Wednesday. So if it is that late Tuesday night for some of it, I know for like us in the US server, it's usually that late Tuesday night. That's actually March 12th. But looking at the banner itself, most speculations are telling us that it's going to be Chiori, the new character, alongside Ito for the 5 stars. And the 4 stars on the banner are most likely going to be, and once again, this is subject to change, so take this with a grain of salt, but we are going most likely to see Xingqiu, Goro, and Yunjin. Now, right off the bat, this banner is very interesting, and as one can see, it is very Geo heavy. So honestly, I feel like this is a hit or miss banner setup. If you are a Geo main or you just really like Geo and you have a lot of it on your account already, then this banner might be for you. Maybe you're trying to still find that C6 for your Goro. Yunjin copies are always nice even for non-Geo mains, because Yunjin is just a good character for other characters that usually use normal attacks. So, you know, there's a lot of constellations that you can get for these 4 stars that are very valuable, because even Xingqiu is very valuable with his constellations. But, you know, once again, with it being such a Geo-heavy banner, I actually don't see most of the player base really going after this banner. I feel like this is just tailored for people who want the Geo or people who just want the new character Chiori. So that's just kind of what I see. In my personal opinion, I'm not going to be really going on this banner. I don't have Ito. I don't need Ito. And for me personally, the only character of value to me is Xingqiu, but I already have the C6. And even if I didn't, I still wouldn't be pulling, because Xingqiu can actually be bought in the shop, and I'd rather just get it that way and, you know, just save my Prima Gems for characters down the road. So, Vixen, what is your thoughts on this banner?
Well, like you were talking about, it is a very Geo-specific, Geo-heavy banner that we're looking at here. And with Chiori, just in general, I think a lot of people were expecting her and hoping that she would be way better for Navia. Now, we've already talked about her kit in a previous Interact post, and, you know, there's plenty of information going on about her kit and how that works, and it just doesn't seem like she's very specific and tailored to helping Navia. It seems like she's more or less actually better for Ito, which is once again very nice for Ito havers or for people who want Ito and just want to go full into Geo. This entire banner is extremely good, but it just seems like she's really not extremely helpful for it. You know, Navia is more basically obviously focused on doing a lot more skill hits so that she can get a huge number off of her skill, whereas Chiori is helping a lot of normal attacks, and that's where Ito kind of shines. And then you have Yunjin, who speeds up those attacks and, you know, increases the damage and whatnot. Goro obviously helping with that, and then you have Xingqiu, who I guess just in general I feel like he's the only one kind of carrying this banner, but I totally agree. I think there's just maybe just not necessary for anyone really to pull. I wouldn't really tell much people to really pull on this specific banner. I would just wait until probably some better 5 stars come out, usually at the end of the day. But looking on to our next specific leak and speculation, we want to go over Arlecchino and Clorinde information that we've kind of seen. I know we delved a lot last week into Arlecchino and looking at her specifically, but there's a little bit more, and maybe a lot of it's just repeated, but I think of really at this point, there's so much to know. I think we are getting closer, so the more information we're getting, the better. And specifically looking at Arlecchino, it seems like she's going to be doing a lot of damage based on skills and AoE, so her burst and whatnot. And so she'll have the idea, obviously, like we talked on the last video, about having 2 forms, and that'll be switched off during, I believe, her skill, which will then change how her burst reacts in either an AoE or a, you know, one target damage type of usage. This might change her weapon as well, so keep that in mind. In the animations, people are talking about her taking off her jacket. If you've seen Arlecchino, obviously she has an outer coat. You probably might be throwing that off, or it might just burn away, considering she's a pyro element. And we've talked a lot about how she's going to be really good for overload, considering she has an overload reaction, like a special reaction, kind of like Nilou with her super blooms. So that's very interesting to see, as well as she'll be working great with Chevreuse, but also with Clorinde coming the version after in 4.7, then it's going to probably be really nice to have both of them work together, considering Clorinde is an off-field electro applier, which we'll talk about in a second. A lot of people have been talking about like an off-field type thing with like how Arlecchino is going to be on-field, and then you have Furina off-field for Vaporize or some other characters. But I think as well we've seen a lot of people as well talk about how the Vaporize and whatnot and different reactions besides Overload are going to be based on her constellations, and they'll give a better boost besides that, so that you can actually work outside of the Overload reaction once you actually get to certain constellations. But I don't know, how does Arlecchino kind of interest you, Rift? And especially, I know you're looking at 4 stars, but how does Arlecchino maybe see in your favor?
Yeah, well, obviously, being a Hu Tao main, I don't really need another Pyro DPS. So naturally, I'm disinclined to pull because I don't need, but who knows, that could change. You never know. But honestly, at first glance, when I'm seeing all this, it looks so cool. And it reminds me a lot of how Child works. And I know you mentioned that probably in the last video at some point. Just because maybe, she is also a Harbinger. And so she'll be the 3rd playable Harbinger we get. And so being very similar to Child in function, or just kind of, I guess it's the main part is the fact that she switches weapons, she switches stance, and that's a lot like what Child already does. So it's very interesting to see that we're basically, she probably is just going to be Pyro version of Child with a lot of, I guess you could say, power creep maybe. But Child still is a pretty good DPS at that. But honestly, like, when I look at Arlecchino, it's exciting to see what she can bring to the table for Overload specifically, and what these future characters like Clorinde will complement her, and seeing what she will also bring to the table to even further increase the potential of Arlecchino. But even when we do get Arlecchino, we have characters already like Furina and Chevreuse that people have been talking about will have a lot of synergy with. So it'll be very fun to build teams around her with that specifically. Maybe not even playing with Overload, but using maybe some Vaporize setups. And I think what you were saying, Vixen, was at C0 she's kind of locked down perhaps to Overload specifically, whereas with Constellations she can play a little bit outside of that with more freedom.
Yeah, it definitely seems that C0 is going to focus heavily on Overload, whereas maybe some other reactions, specifically just Pyro ones, will allow maybe that specific Overload reaction maybe to happen outside of the Overload reaction. But at this point, we'll just have to wait and see what the coming weeks say about her kit.
Right, I definitely am excited about it, and I'm really excited because I know you're going to pull, and I think you're going after the C2, so that'll be very exciting to watch and see, and just see what teams we build around that with that. And maybe when we do our Arlecchino guide, that'll be a lot of fun, so can't wait to see that.
And speaking of just more, characters that can work with Arlecchino, obviously talking about more in depth of Clorinde, it seems like Clorinde's going to be obviously a little bit later than her, but she's going to be an Electro support with a focus on, just constant reactions. And so considering that, like I said earlier, Clorinde's going to be an off-field character, and she might even have Chevreuse as a 4-star on the banner. That'll be really nice. That's been an interesting kind of leak to see, which is extremely really good to see, because you've basically got 2 really good supports for the Overload reaction. They are just extremely, they are very soon right after Arlecchino, who's going to be focused on Overload, so it might be difficult to try to get all of them. But considering that Clorinde's an off-field Electro applier, helps with the Overload, might have Chevreuse on her banner, enhances maybe Electro and Pyro reactions and whatnot, maybe for her own personal damage, maybe for others. And in general, it seems like Clorinde might be helping future characters, never mind just in Fontaine, but with Chevreuse greatly benefiting characters in Natlan as well. And this is interesting because it makes us think that maybe Overload is becoming a little bit more prevalent, seeing how just in general the entire instances with a lot of Natlan things, especially with them being like constantly like, the warring nation, like that type of idea, then it might make sense that, I don't know, the idea of like constant explosions happening everywhere, it makes sense for Overload to be a little bit more kind of in your face.
It definitely feels warlike. Yeah, in your face, just like you said. I mean, honestly, hearing you talk about Cloron and everything, I'm kind of excited to see how. And yes, we have characters like Yaimiko exists for like that's like the go-to right now for off-field electro damage and application, right? If you have Yaimiko, she's like the best in slot for that specific role or playstyle. And then if you don't have that, there's Fischl, right? So seeing Cloron be another type of character that can probably be that role is very interesting, but also could be an upgrade to overload specific teams with, you already mentioned Chevers and stuff. So like I could see a lot of potential there. And then moving into Natlan, I mean, everything you said, it's basically, I'm just restating it, but I'm really just agreeing with that. And I'm excited to see that because not only, I don't think people have to feel like they have to have Arlecchino, if you know what I'm saying, for Clorinde. Like, I'm possibly not getting Arlecchino, and I'm honestly possibly not getting Clorinde either. That's just not in my plans right now. But say I did get Clorinde without Arlecchino, I think there's still a lot of teams that you could play around with in that scenario, because I do have Chevrolet and I have some other Electro and Pyro characters I could still probably throw together. Not to mention other teams altogether, because she could also be used in other stuff like Electro Charged or just even Dendro teams. Like that, I think could still work and be a lot of fun to play around with.
Looking at the last speculation that we want to talk about is looking forward to 4.8, and this is just been changing consistently. You know, a few weeks ago we saw that Xiao and Zhongli were probably going to be getting, you know, specific skins in 4.8, so possibly like some sort of Yaksha skin and some sort of, you know, finally getting those specific Archon, you know, white skins with like the white robes, and everybody was extremely happy for it. And then all of a sudden it switched over to Amber, Sucrose, and Albedo getting the specific skins in 4.8 and talking about how those would be the summer skins. And now for some odd reason we've just decided to switch again, with more skins being changed to Wanderer or, you know, whoever, whatever you've named him, or Nilou and Kirara. And this is a little interesting, and I'm a little skeptical of this one because out of all three of the different sets, you know, Zhao and Zhongli is one, the next being Albedo, Amber, and Sucrose, and then the third being Wanderer, Nilou, and Kirara. It seems like this last one, Wanderer, Nilou, and Kirara, it almost seems like it's almost like not going to happen. It just doesn't really make too much sense. You know, giving Wanderer, Nilou, and Kirara specific skins is a little interesting with how that kind of works out. But I don't know. What are your thoughts, Rift, on specifically these skins?
Yeah, it's like at this point, everyone's getting a new skin, right? Like, what's it gonna be next? Like Sino? I don't know. But I think there's two main things that immediately come to my mind when I'm seeing this kind of speculation. Like, number one, yeah, I agree with you that this is I find it skeptical. Like, I don't know how this would happen. But who knows? I mean, 4.8 is still quite a ways away. It is the summer event, so maybe part of the summer event is going to involve, you know, some other characters taking part in just the way the event story goes. So it could very well happen. So I'm not saying it can't, and I'm not saying it will, but or will not even, but I guess I could see it at the same time, on the contrary, because the other thing I noticed immediately is these are all Sumeru characters, except Kirara. But she did come out in, you know, a lot later, like in Sumeru region. Who knows? But like seeing Wanderer and Nilou here, both Sumeru 5 stars, maybe in the summer event there's going to be some kind of story involved where they're part of the summer event somehow, and Kirara is just there because Kirara is a courier and she goes all over Teyvat, so she can kind of be thrown anywhere and you can make an excuse for it to make sense, I guess is what I'm saying. So I think that if this one's true for the skins, which I don't know, I still kind of doubt it, but if it's true, then I think it would also make sense for one of the 4.8 banners, maybe the second half, because the first half would feature the new character, Emily possibly, would be Wanderer and Nilou, and have Kirara as one of the 4 stars, because that would only make sense, right? Why would MiHoYo have a new skin and then the character with the skins not featured at the same time? It's always been where when they have a new skin, those characters usually are available at some point. Now, I think the first time this has happened where that's not been the case is the new skins we got recently with Ganyu and Shenhe, because, well, we don't have Ganyu and Shenhe's banners around right now. But I think it's possible that we might get it soon, so who knows? And if we don't, I guess that would be the first time. So maybe Wanderer and Nilou won't show up around 4.8, but I don't know. I would think that if there's a featured skin, then the character would be with it, because it would only make sense, especially for new players, to have you know, get the character, because who wants to buy a skin and not have a character? That just doesn't make any sense in the marketing sense, you know, if you know what I mean.
Well, that's everything we have for this week. We've gone over a lot, especially talking about, new skins that are constantly changing, as well as a little bit more information on new characters, as well as looking at the 4.5 banners. So if you guys did like the video, then please go ahead and like and subscribe. And make sure to go ahead and check out our Discord. And that's really all we have for this week. So we'll see you guys in the next one.